excited to have you here today. Can everybody hear me? Okay. First of all, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So how does a trumpeter, a composer, a band leader from New Orleans and New York, how do you celebrate your birthday in Hong Kong?
Just be here with y'all is good. It's a pleasure.
And you are having a birthday party for yourself tonight?
I don't know about it, but I'm not throwing it.
Well, you're having a show for us tonight.
Well, we always have a party when we play, you know, it's always a blessing.
Well, I always find birthdays to be a time of celebration of things that we have achieved in life, as well as a time for reflection. And just a little context for the audience, you have achieved quite a lot.
I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of firsts. You were the first person to win a Grammy for jazz and classical in 1983, right? And you also won a Pulitzer Prize in music in 1997. And if you look at your career, you've really pushed yourself to do a lot of collaborations. You've collaborated with artists outside of jazz. You made an album with Willie Nelson. So what do you have left to achieve? What does the future hold for you, Wynton?
Just always trying to learn and be better, and to become more humble as I get older and work on all the skills that I wish I had, to develop my ability to write and hear and play better, and to be better with the younger musicians that I see coming up and create more space for them. And there's so many areas of improvement always, and try to just be dedicated and bring the same kind of youthful seriousness to things, so nothing is ever routine. Mm-hmm. And to be able to learn from people that I don't agree with. You know, it's a never-ending struggle.
Okay. Anything in particular that you've been learning recently?
I have so many students, they're always calling me, telling me I'm not doing something. I think I'm working on a piece. I'm trying to write my forms a different way. So it's kind of complicated to understand. But I'm trying to really have more brevity. And that's a challenge. And in terms of just things in the ongoing dialogue, there's always forms of music to try to learn and integrate into your style and become better.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you mentioned your students. So I know that you are an educator. You are director of jazz at Juilliard. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so I was kind of thinking as an educator myself about working with young people, right? So when you were young, you came to music through influences like your family, right, and things like that. And this time, or now, young people have so many ways to get into music, so many different and new ways. So what do you see young people doing with jazz? How are they developing it? How are they making it their own? And where do you see the future going with the young people?
Well, I think they want to make it their own, but the people who played before them are so great that the more they learn about them, the more overwhelming it is. So to be able to look into that flame and to maintain and have a belief that you can be a part of this is the main thing I have to convince them, because it's easy to start picking low-hanging fruit. And I always tell my younger people, youth is not a value. You are young and you will become old. It's not like intelligence or speed. Is just a state that you are in. So try not to connect yourself with youth movements, but try to work on fundamental issues and fundamental problems and find the masters that you want to find, and understand that this is when you encounter these difficulties, understand that they are real, and that you will have to have years and decades of investment and dedication, and even at the end of that time, you still probably in your own assessment will not be good. So I try to just disconnect them from the kind of cliches that are in their environment that will keep them from achieving the realization of self, which is the main tenet of jazz, that you have something that's special about you, and you don't have to earn that. That is yours. So first I try to empower them, that you are you have your thing, now this is a school, and all I can do is teach you things that have existed from a technical standpoint and perspectives. There are many things you're gonna have to teach me, like what you invented has nothing to do with what I know, which is what I would like you to do, whether I agree with what you do or not. And that's the main part of my job, is to give them the confidence to continue to search for themselves in the context of this art form, and not feel that the art form is too narrow for their creativity because they become intimidated by how great other people were.
And did you experience that when you were coming up through jazz?
Yeah, I don't know that I experienced it like them because I was always around the great musicians. Yeah. And I was always one of the only younger people in my environment who really wanted to play real jazz. So the older musicians had so much love for me because I was trying to play. They couldn't believe a younger person was in a club wanting to know how to play. Even though I couldn't play, I was trying to play. So Sweets Edison or Jerry Mulligan, or I could tell you a funny story about Jerry Mulligan.
Please.
I was booked to play a gig with him. I was 18 in Seattle. There was no reason in the world for me to be on this gig. I didn't know his music. But when he saw me, because the word about I could play had passed around, everybody thought I really could play. And they were like, so when he saw me, he said, man, you're that kid from New Orleans. I heard about you. He said, do you know? He started asking me songs. Of course, I didn't know any of his music. I grew up playing funk songs thinking they were jazz. So he was, every time he named the tune, I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, So then he said, well, maybe he still can play. So we were playing at a theater in Seattle. I don't know, it was maybe 1,500 people. And when you play and you're looking at somebody, everything they think is clear in their playing. So we started the first song, and Jerry he was maybe 6'3", 6'2", and I'm like 5'10". So he's looking down at me, and we started to play, and it dawned on him after the first song, wow, this guy cannot play. So while he was playing, he was just looking at me like, and I could see him then thinking, we have 45 more minutes to go. And we endured that 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And when we finished, he was trying to determine what was he going to say to me. So he was known for not suffering fools, right? He was not like he looked at me and he decided to speak to me like I was a child. He said, somebody's got a lot of little practicing to do. So, you know, with my relationship with the older musicians now, if you go forward, I don't know, 15 years from that, Jerry knew he was sick. He knew he was dying. He called me, he said, look, man, I'm not going to make it. He said, I want you to do a retrospective concert for me that I cannot play at, but I want you to listen to all of my music, which you should have done before I played with you when you were 18. And by then we had, of course, a long-standing relationship. So I listened to all his music and picked the music that I think he would want us to play. I mean, that was 1996, even now a long time ago. But I had those types of relationships with many of the great musicians. And the musicians I teach will never know those people because none of them are. Sonny Rollins probably is the only one still alive at this time.
You're able to pass that on to your students.
I try to pass the love of it and the seriousness of it on to them and tell them you're not going to find it on a computer. Yeah. Like you might want to ask Alexa and imitate some AI tool. You're never going to play through that means. This is about reasoning and empathy. And if you're not really working on that in the extreme degree, then the baseline of it is a deep human type of love that's all encompassing. And that's what separated Dizzy and Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington from other people. They had that, and they were able to express that in their music. And if you want to be a part of them, you have to develop the ability to do that, and it's painful. So I make them understand that, and I'm always telling them and making them listen to other people and ask them, what did this person play when they were playing? And there's always no knowledge of what another person you're playing with plays. And I always say, how can we play 10-minute song and not have any idea what anybody played but us? So, you know, we have things to overcome that are substantial.
Well, I remember in an interview you once said that you didn't even like jazz music when you were young.
I hated it, yeah. No.
So what was the turning point?
When I was 12, my brother and I, my older brother is a fantastic musician. He's 13 months older than me. We had all of our father's albums laid out on the ground and all of ours, and I was like the Ohio Players and Parliament Funkadelic and Earth, Wind and Fire. Everybody got rhinestones and the woman with honey on her and it's some kind of crazy. And my father's records, everybody put a suit on or, you know, somebody, and my brother said, man, why daddy's records, the people look like they have sense and everybody's crazy on ours? And I looked at it and I said, man, let's put on one of these. Now, we had never listened to the music, really. He listened to it. and I put on this John Coltrane record called Giant Steps. And I just started listening to it, and I wondered, because my father had a picture of him and John Coltrane that we had seen that they took in 1963 when Train came to New Orleans. And I always heard stories about Train, but I didn't listen to the music. And I said, man, I kind of like this. I wonder if we could ever learn how to play for real like these people are playing. And that started me on the kind of journey. And I started listening to that record every day. And from that recording, I got into other things, but I started to try to learn the saxophone solo on the trumpet, and, you know, on and on and on.
And do you have that same moment for classical as well? For those of you who don't know, Wynton is also a classical musician, and he composes. Did you have that same memory of going, oh, I'm also interested in this world?
Well, I was on a streetcar in New Orleans. Then I was 13. I was already in the train. And then in New Orleans, it was then everything was segregated. So if you were in a streetcar, only black people would be in the back of the car. Never would a white person go back there. So I had my trumpet case, and a white guy got on at Loyola University. And damn it, if he didn't walk right in the back and put his trumpet case next to mine. Now, I didn't necessarily like that. You're going to get both of us beat up. So I'm trying to look at him like, man, you know, do you know where you are? So he's looking at me, man, he's smiling. He said, man, is that a trumpet? He was so happy. So, yeah, man, it's a trumpet. So I was trying not to give it up to him. He said, hey, man, I'm a trumpet player. I said, Jay, I see your case. So I was trying to play him off. Then he said, hey, man, I want you to check this record out. I said, okay. Then we had albums. So he gave me this recording. And when I saw it was classical music, I was disappointed. I was like, man.
You thought it was
It was a trumpet player named Maurice Andre. And I turned it over to not look at him and started to read the cover because I didn't want anybody messing with me. And then I read the back of the album. It said the guy's parents were coal miners. I said, damn, some guy had parents was mining coal and they played classical music on a damn trumpet. I got to put this on. Then I was much more friendly with him. I said, yeah, man, you know, such and such. He was like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, maybe I was 13. He might have been 20, 21. Then I got off and I put the record on. And, you know, Maurice Andre playing like piccolo trumpet. I didn't know what that was. So I thought it was a regular trumpet. And I started to play the music off the record, not because I couldn't get the music, but just that's how we learned music. We just listened to it. But I couldn't figure out how he got the sound on the Leopold Mozart trumpet concerto. So I was playing a big trumpet, trying to make that sound of him. And later I met a teacher. He said, man, that's a piccolo trumpet. I said, huh? He said, there's all these different trumpets. He said, I'm going to give you a piccolo trumpet. If you learn how to play it, I'm going to let you have it. Man, I started practicing this piccolo trumpet. And from that point on, I got into listening to classical music. I'd gone to some symphonic concerts just because of my father, but nobody. I know you go there and there would never be anyone black. You know, when you're raised in a segregated environment, you generally stay in your environment. You're not really comfortable in other environments. So my mother, who grew up in the St. Bernard projects, but my mother was unbelievably intelligent. Like she could do all of my chemistry homework, and she was also deeply. It was the only time it was right, and she was also deeply empathetic. So she had like 4 kids, and she still worked for this thing called extension that the government had at some point, where somebody who knew about home ec would go into poorer people's home and speak the language that they understood. And I would go on calls with my mama sometimes, and she was so empathetic with people who were we were not in the best shape, but they were in terrible shape. And I would see how she would connect with people just with the truth. Like we walked into a lady's home and she had like 8 kids, and she was young, you know. At that time, I don't know, I was 11 or something. You don't know how old older people are, maybe 26, 25 or something. My mama looked at her when we walked in. I said, ooh, it was filthy in there. And the first thing she said was, ooh, Lord, baby, you can't raise all these children in this type of filth. And she would just leave it out there. And I noticed the silence was very important for the emotion, because when they felt that silence, they could feel what she was telling them. She said, we're going to go clean this over here, baby, and we're going to work on that. And when I come back, I want you to know, keep in mind, my mama was a young woman too herself, but just the type of feeling that that I would see her exhibit, and the empathy and the understanding. It's still lessons I teach my students now about I can only hear your emotion when there is silence. and on and on and on. That's the type of environment. So I would get in the social environment of classical music. It was uncomfortable, and my father was always like, "Hey, don't have civil rights movement thoughts." Now remember, the civil rights movement in America, King had just been killed, 68. So I'm talking about 71, 70. All these things were fresh. The emotion of it. People still were fired up about civil rights, and by that I mean all the people, not just black people. And so it was an issue that was pressing. So I was a part of that kind of movement, reading the same type of literature that people read at that time, being a part of the same programs that were existing at that time, with the same type of optimism my parents had for changes that would occur that they had fought for and so many other adults had fought for. I was a part of that environment. But my father was also a jazz musician, so I knew a body of music and the seriousness of it that other people did not know.
When we talk about those values of empathy and understanding, I mean, I think that really comes out through a lot of your work. Much of what you have created has a message.
Yeah.
And so I think you've been described once by the New York Times as provocative. Is that something that you agree with? What do you want people to think or to feel when they're listening to your music?
I think when you have a lot of corruption that you yourself question about yourself, if you see somebody and they're not questioning it, they're provocative to you. But when they're telling you something that's plain, anybody can see it, it's not provocative. If you notice the things I'm telling you, none of them are provocative. They're very fundamental things. It's the things that I say to my students and that I learned from people like Dizzy, Jerry Mulligan. The story I told you about Jerry Mulligan, that was not provocative. His understanding was you cannot play. It wasn't philosophical.
Yes.
And once you start to get into philosophy to cover up basic truths, then things become provocative. I've always say about looking at financial documents, if you are not stealing, this document should be easy to understand. A score of music is much more complex than any financial document. If you are stealing, man, I can't understand it. So I don't think of myself, I pose them with certain problems because it's a certain plantation they want you to be on. And if you don't want to be on that plantation, you're not a good guy. But the life you are living is not on that plantation. So you're not living the life of a bad person. And a lot of times the writers and the people who are assigned in our field, they don't really know about it. So unfortunately, they have to give their opinion in public about something they don't know about. And sometimes they have to don the cape of authority about something they don't know about. And that's a heavy cape. But I notice even in my Juilliard auditions, I don't audition guitarists and I don't audition drummers because I feel like I don't know enough about their instrument to have an intelligent opinion. But I'll notice those who know less than I know have no problem adjudicating them.
Of course not.
So sometimes these jobs are difficult, And I try to empathize with them. They have difficult jobs, but some questions go a long way. When you don't know something, you have to put the robe of authority on. Or it's just, I don't really know. I have to study that, or it's beyond what I know about.
So then how do you compose for an orchestral arrangement, or if you're not sure about all the different instruments?
Oh, you got to become sure of them.
You think of all the voices. How do you hear the voices?
You got to become sure of them. You can't do that without knowing.
Yeah.
That's like how you build a building. I'm not really sure of the math. No.
You have to have confidence.
Not confidence, you better know the math. Like, well, this bridge is up, but I don't know if it's gonna, no. Show me the mechanics. It's like my man who was going down with that submarine. No. This is not a place to be fooling around with something you think might work. So it's so many people in a rehearsal, you can't sit in a rehearsal with 70 people and start saying, can I hear your part? No.
Right.
You have to acquaint yourself with the particulars of it.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your show tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
So it is described as a fusion of Eastern and Western culture. I immediately thought of all the jazz musicians who came over to China in the 1920s and 30s, or Duke Ellington's Far East Suite. Is this kind of what you're doing tonight, or are you going somewhere else?
Well, it's like a development on things that they may have done. Like Buck Clayton is the jazz trumpet player who came
1930.
in the 30s, yeah, and I knew him.
You did?
It's also when I couldn't play, unfortunately. I remember I played a concert, I had a lime green suit on, and he came to it in Washington Park, and afterwards, the great Buck Clayton. I was like, oh man, Buck. One of my great mentors from high school was Sweets Edison, who had played in the Count Basie trumpet section with Buck in the 1930s. So Sweets had told him, hey man, look out for my baby boy right there. So Buck came and he saw the set, and he looked at my suit. I had some white shoes on. He said, damn man, he said, man, you are clean. If you just played that good, we'd be okay. So, but I just that I didn't know that history at that time, which I wish I could have asked Buck about it. But yeah, it's a continuation of all the things, and of course the cliches about the pentatonic scales, which are difficult for us to understand in the West because there's so many scales and they have so many different meanings. And I'm always asking my friends, Huang Ye is Wei Min's son. He was like my consultant on it. I'm always asking, is this disrespectful, or is this corny? Or is this going to be like I'm doing something cliched that people will think I'm disrespecting them? So we sat down and went through the mythology of different things, and I read up on it, listened to a lot of music, talk, but this stuff is so complicated. It's not something you can just learn. You have to find a way you can speak in a near language that still is respectful, and it becomes more like your impression of something. And I see Hung Ye is there. And for me, raise your hand, Hung Ye, so they can see you. This is my man, a young man.
I saw him last night. I was at your show last night. Wow.
You saw him play on the show last night.
Wonderful last night, yeah.
Yeah, he played great, and he's also a great composer. We played with the Shenzhen Symphony, and he wrote one of the arrangements we did of the theme song of Sun Wukong, and he did the orchestral arrangement. Wow. So I'm still learning about me. I know I check out his music, his scores and stuff, but when I heard that orchestral arrangement, I was like, man, you put trumpets up on high E flats? He said, it's the opening of the concert. It's got to be big. Play the E flat. But the dialogues and the things they go back and forth with us very much, I look at him more like he would be a son to me, or in that kind of age. So I rely on him to tell me, don't do this, or do this, or think about this, or listen to this. I would not name it that. And with his knowledge of music, which is substantial, and his ambition for music, he's just starting out, but he has many ambitions and things he's working on. I'm able to channel and get much more than just what I'm doing from him. So this piece is like that. He helped me with all the titles and, talking about the form, 10-bar forms. I had him play on a difficult piece. It's in 5/4. So the first night he played the concert with us, he was struggling with it. So I looked at him, I said,
Some practice?
let's get on this, man. Boy, the next day, he was like, we're on this. And he was on it. So we keep the tradition going of understanding it's serious. We're not up here to play games. We have a good time, but we gotta handle our business.
Well, you speak a lot about jazz is kind of representing democracy and being very much about American culture, but it must be so interesting for you to be traveling around the world and seeing what people in other cultures are doing with jazz.
Well, I think people are all democratic when it comes to themselves.
I like that. I think that's a good end for my questions, and I think we can now take it to the audience. And we have about 30 minutes left. If anybody would like to ask Wynton some questions. Absolutely. Christine, yeah, please, in the back.
Actually, just picking up on that, Ralph Ellison said jazz is an artistic counterpart to the American political system. And I know that you've supported the jazz ambassadors, the Cold War, all that program that went on with the State Department. They've just launched about a year ago something called the Global Music Diplomacy Initiative and given out a Peace Prize. And I just want to get your thoughts on that and the power of jazz and music in general, especially in these very fraught times as foreign policy and maybe soft power.
Right. Well, Ralph Ellison was my man. I go to his house all the time. Everything he did was for his wife. We're going to talk about soft diplomacy. Fanny, from the second if he read a book if he cracked a joke, if he told you something serious, if he read something, he was always trying to see where she was. One day, and he literally treated me like I was his grandson. For those who may not know who he is, he's like, wrote The Invisible Man. He's one of the Afro-American greatest writers. Intellectual, was a trumpet player. Went to Tuskegee in the 1930s, met his wife there. So this would be in the 1980s and 90s, so they had been married for 50 years. So I know one day I was joking with him, I always mess with him. I said, "Yeah, Ralph, I noticed you don't finish a sentence unless you look back to where Fanny is." He said, "Well, that's because I know why I'm here." He said, "And if you're smart, you'll understand that's why you're here too." She said, "Invite that boy again." So it's like when I was growing up with my brother, I cannot sleep with music on. He cannot sleep unless music, he has to have music on for him to sleep. It has to be off for me to sleep. Man, that was a struggle every night. And he was bigger than me. So I had to be diplomatic. Man, just give me 2 or 3 nights. You take the 4. Well, why? I could take all 7. Come on, man, you don't want me up. Okay, he give me the 2 or 3. We have a tendency to beat an ideological horse into the ground. And my kids would always ask me when we were growing up, "Would you tell him something?" I said, "Well, how big is he?" "What would you do if they told us to get up?" "Well, how many of them are there?" I would always say, "I'm going to prove to y'all I'm from the hood, because when this don't smell right, I'm running." People look at too many movies. This is not a movie, this is our lives. We cannot survive without diplomacy. You can't survive the hood without diplomacy. You cannot survive your house without diplomacy. I had a lot of brothers. Then my 5th brother was autistic. Man, he would bang his head into the wall. He walked on his tiptoes. He never spoke. It was like, this was 1972. We never heard of autism. Now already my mama didn't have time. All the time was going to my autistic brother. But it was very interesting. For us, it had a big impact, because now instead of being all me-centric, you had to always account for him. Where is he? What is he doing? Did he eat? Did this? Did that? Did the other thing? At a certain point, I had the idea I was going to teach my brother how to talk. So I terrorized my autistic brother for 2 years, not understanding what autism was, well-meaning. Then when I saw a 60 Minutes interview with the kid who was autistic, who learned how to talk, they said, "What do you all most want?" He said, "We most want people to leave us alone." I immediately wish I could apologize to my brother. So, yeah, musicians, we don't come with military power. That's not who we are. We talk about underlying human truths. And the more profound you are in your musicianship, the deeper those truths are going to be. And what are those deepest truths? They're things like leave space. It's Lao Tzu. It's in all the great things you want to find. The reconciliation of opposites and the finding and maintenance of a balance of things that do not seem that they can be balanced. Dancing on that edge all the time. You're always on that windy precipice. You're always forced to choose. But you are forced to choose. I have to make my own choices. You are forced to choose. To put that before you. Here is your choice. Not to tell you what you should be doing. Here is your choice. One of my great friends was an alcoholic. We used to call him the philosopher of the street. He used to always have a saying. He said, "It's out here for you. I got mine." So, I always come with the same message, but I know how to talk to grown folks. I know how to talk to children. I know how to talk in front of your mama and them. If I go in your house and you say, "My daddy don't want you talking about so-and-so," I know how to be quiet because I'm an adult. I'm not a child. And that's the key to getting along with people in the world. at a certain point as a musician. Now, if you have another role, then you have another role. You have another set of responsibilities. You have another set of challenges. It's easy for a musician to talk. We're not politicians. Nobody's going to do anything based on what we say. Okay, Marvin Gaye wrote What's Going On. It's a great song. It didn't stop nothing from happening. But we can sing it and we can enjoy it. But it's not the same as somebody who has a military at their disposal. I try to be very pragmatic and truthful and in the moment that I'm in. Does that make sense?
Yes, Lee, please.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Wynton, for such eye-opening, warm, and entertaining talk as well. It's been such a pleasure. I'm going to break an FCC cardinal rule and ask 2 questions. But my first one is actually for my cohorts in the audience. Would you join me in singing Happy Birthday to Wynton?
Yes!
Thank you.
Let's sing to a musical legend, shall we? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
And now to my question. We're stood here in one of the world's most renowned press clubs. We're packed to the rafters with about 100 or so people here in this room. To my knowledge, anyway, you're the only person here that's won a Pulitzer, which is pretty phenomenal. And for your album Blood on the Tracks, which spoke to, Blood in the Fields, which spoke to the aftermath of slavery in the United States. I'm wondering if you can speak to the parallels, if you observe any, between jazz and journalism.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first thing, I want to thank you all for singing Happy Birthday. I want you all to observe, he set the key. Okay, look, you don't even know it. I'm going to tell you how quick it happened. Okay, it's always fascinating to me, how do people know what key to sing in? You had the loudest and lowest first 2 notes, and everybody sang in that key. So congratulations to y'all. Okay, and I want you to notice how it's not something anybody even would have noticed. How natural it was for us to just sing together in time. We stopped together, we sang the right pitches. A whole group of people way back here, unbelievable space difference. That is the truth of what jazz actually talks about. If you know who's setting a moment, man, that moment can be. Without knowing it, now if we'd have said, follow this key, we'd have never followed it. I think, the similarities are first rigor. You have to write an opinion. You have to say something. So I don't know who said it. Maybe it was Shakespeare said, to act is heroic. Now you're different from me in a barbershop. I'm talking. I could talk all day in a barbershop. When you come to me and say, I'm writing this for so-and-so, what I meant was, even babies know when you're taking a photograph of them. I have a 5-month-old child, and when you go to take her picture, she ain't the same as when you weren't taking it. So that would be the first thing. The rigor that is required to be in public with an opinion. The second thing is responsibility to a constituency. You have to be responsible to somebody. Everybody wants to be non-responsible. Well, don't write then. It's always kind of a thing of myself. Hey, I want music not to be on, but I'm in a room with my brother. He wants the music on. And there are people with different sensibilities I have to address, I have to write for. There are different things. I want to communicate to them. Then it's the ability to understand other perspectives as you understand your own. The most difficult skill to develop. I'm playing, but at the same time, the drummer is playing. That instrument is much louder than mine. At the same time, a bass player is playing. Way down at the bottom, boom, 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 boom. They're doing this, boom, 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 boom. I'm doing, I have all the rhythms I'm playing. That bass is. piano player is playing. And the piano is playing stuff I don't want to hear them playing. I can't stop what I'm playing and say, can you stop playing that? I have to play with that piano. Now I have to change my perspective because I don't have the time, because I'm improvising, to formulate thoughts about the piano player. I only have time to, what chord is that? I have to hear it, the rhythm. Can I play with this? And when I listen to the piano, or when I listen to the bass, when I listen to the drums, and I have the slightest symbiotic feeling of empathy, they change the way they play. Instantly, like y'all saying that happy birthday. When I have feelings of, man, why are they playing that? Damn, I wish you would stop playing that on the drums. They instantly have feelings of hostility. I'm gonna play more of this. So those are three of the things. And writing and developing thematic material is a lot like improvising. When you improvise, you come up with a theme. There's a solo by Charlie Parker I teach all the time. He goes, boo bee bee dee doo dee, doo dee 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 dee, boo bee bee dee dee, boo dee bee dee dee, do dee bee dee boo dee boo doo boo doo doo bee dee, dee dee boo doo boo bee bee dee bee dee, boo boo dee boo boo doo bee bee doo bee dee boo dee bee low. So it's like a minor seventh interval, a scale passage, and he's combining them. He goes into different keys. He's taking that A, that B, that C, he's putting them together, he's turning them. And he's improvising it all, but he's making all of those phrases make sense and become an organic and connected whole of thematic material that unfolds as he plays. It is what makes him such a genius as an improviser. So I used to have a thing that I would do with my now 16-year-old daughter when I was walking her to school, where I say, okay, we're gonna go noun, verb, subject. And every time you tell me the next sentence, I want you to develop the noun, the verb, or the subject. So you say, I am Oni. Okay, now who is I? So your next sentence has to be, I don't like pink flowers. Now, you're gonna talk about flowers, or you're gonna talk about yourself again? Or you're gonna talk about you don't like, but I love gumbo. Now you start to tell me a story. And so as you unfold your story, we be going to see who could make the, just a game, who can make the best story. And when we get stuck in one, say, oh no, you didn't do it. Why you never developed the object? Then she got to a point after a year or two, hold on a second, I need to do with my verb. I'll say the verb is the most active part of a sentence. Hold on, I need a little more action. I gotta get my verb right. So jazz is the same way. Yes, we're improvising, but we improvise with, we have to keep those restrictions around us that allow us to test our skills. As we remove the restrictions, it's like you don't have to dribble or play basketball. You just run up and down the court. You're not playing basketball, So the restrictions are also an important part of the improvisations, as the language is a part of the restriction, is a part of writing. It's much easier to think something than it is to write it. And then there are other things of what do you want to do? There's a high-mindedness that's with our greatest musicians. And it's just how they were, just who Duke Ellington was. He was willing to take those positions in his music and suffer the consequences of those positions. And writers are confronted with the same things all the time. So that's just a few.
Another question? Oh, gosh, there's so many. Eric, yes, please. Sorry if I'm not going to get to everybody.
Eric Wishart, former president of the FCC, and happy birthday, Wynton, and I saw the concert last night, which was wonderful. I wanted to ask you a question about gender diversity in music, following on from Lee's question about journalism in music. I mean, journalism used to be a male club, and in my job at AFP, we've really pushed to get towards gender equality in the newsroom and in coverage, representation of women. And as a role model, as someone who knows young people, who has a daughter, at least one daughter, I was struck last night that your wonderful orchestra, how many women do you have in it? Out of 50, I think I counted you 15 musicians.
We have one.
One.
They just got in, by the way.
Yeah. So I know you've been asked about this in the past, but what's your position in this? Women are as good musicians as men are. Don't think you would dispute that. So Why have your orchestras and bands been predominantly male over the years? And what's your position on that going forward? Thank you.
We have thank you for the question first. We have a predominantly male field. People play trumpets, saxophones, predominantly male. Let's say, in my growing up in bands, how many women trumpet players did I play with? In my band sections in high school, and none. Now we have more. Now let's talk about the competition for a job like ours. We have the one band in America that has health care, that has. So the turnover in our band was one person would leave every 18 years. Okay, we started with an original band. My septet members, all male. Duke Ellington's members, all male. Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, all male. Then the issue was, are we going to have black and white musicians playing together? Okay, that was a big issue, written about in the papers as they tried to invent a kind of racial dynamic. Okay, we got to integrate the bands. My band was all black. The Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra was integrated, purposefully integrated. Okay. Now, who's going to quit? That was the thing in the 1990s. Was it going to fire somebody? Just put a woman in. Okay, you have to have auditions. Okay, we have auditions. We have a drum audition. I said, you know, if you have auditions, the winner of that audition is going to almost certainly be a white male between 50 and 60. Why? There's a lot of reasons for it. But rather than me detailing all those reasons, I'm going to tell you that's what it's going to be. We lay out everything we played the year before, we send it out. One woman applies, 99 drummers. The best drummers do not apply. You have a great drummer, they're going to audition for you? No, they're not going to do that. Where one of the greatest drummers was playing with us, and I was talking to him, we were joking, I said, read the music. He said, why? Okay, we're jazz musicians. Then, needless to say, one lady did not make it into the final. So I was always saying, you're not going to get an orchestra that way. You have to put the women in. Now, I'm a big believer in affirmative action. So when we have positions that are open, we will put more women in. But the women have got to play on the level that we're playing on, which is a very high level because there are no jobs. So you got to understand what the level is and the scarcity of the jobs. If we had 6 jobs in the country, which I wish we had, and I always tell all of my women students, I look at their struggle from the perspective of the struggle I always had with the injustice of being out here. You got to make sure you're playing better than everybody and always assume positions of leadership. And when you have positions of leadership, you can do things the way you want. And you put the people in that you want to put in. And in our field, it is a struggle. We have more women that can play on a higher level, but it will remain a struggle. It's a struggle to have black people working jobs. It is a struggle. I have a staff of 120 people, and it's hard to have integration on that staff. Not with women, and the band is an issue. At certain parts of the staff, those are not jobs that black people will have. High-paying jobs is difficult. Why? There are many reasons.
Do you do blind auditions?
Blind
auditions.
The audition was blind, but this is jazz. Like
You know what I mean by blind? I don't know if the audience knows what I mean by a blind
means
audition, which is where you can't see
tell
who's
who it
playing.
is. You can't tell who it is. But
So you don't know if it's a 50-year-old white guy.
You don't want to not know. You want to put the people you want in. Because if you don't know, the people you think are going to get in, they're not getting in. I'm telling you what it is. I know my field. So if we got to go through it 8 times and end up with that being the result, okay, now we're 8 years down this. But since a position turns over once every 18 years, so this is not the battleground I would pick for women's rights, even though I believe in it. And I believe that the rights of women are connected to the rights of black Americans. It always has been. Frederick Douglass said that in the 19th century. So I never want to be at odds with any type of women's rights because, there's still a struggle for black people. a black male to get jobs or to get education or to be a part of anything that's progressive is a struggle. I don't want them in a blind audition. Give them a job. Teach them. Let them be a part of what's happening because they have started behind. And that's how I look at it. I think going forward, there will be more women in our orchestra. It does not mean it will be better, but it doesn't mean it'll be worse. It's going to be up to them because it won't be my determining. And I certainly have never denied a person a job because they were a woman. And if anything, I lean more towards, of the 3 women I've asked to join the orchestra, 2 of them didn't want to do it. And it makes sense. They can make more money not doing it. They can play, they can express and do the things they wanted to do. They certainly are not obligated to join because they're women. But these issues are not complex issues. They aren't. They're very simple issues. If you want to see something, make it happen and deal with whatever it is. So that's how I look at it.
Christy, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Christy Lou Stout. I'm a correspondent board governor here at the FCC and an anchor correspondent with CNN. Thank you for the fabulous conversation. Very well moderated by you, Robin. Thank you. You talked about the issue, and you touched on the issue of AI and music, and how AI could not have an edge on human composers because human composers have empathy, human composers have the human touch. But you also, moments ago, said one of the most difficult skills to master is to adapt the perspective of another person.
Right.
So how do you teach empathy to the next generation of composers? And a follow-up question is, you're a really high-profile ambassador of jazz, ambassador of music. Surely the world's biggest tech companies have talked to you about AI? They haven't? No. Not at all? No. Have you heard anything about, are they scraping your music? Are they learning, stealing from your music to teach their AI?
Anyway, I hope they do. I
want to hear more
from
about this. Thank you.
So first, thank you. I wish they would steal from it. I don't, sometimes like some rappers will use my music and they know I don't really like their music. So when they call me and say, well, you want to be pet? No, man, don't pay me. Just take it. Let the people hear 2 minutes of the music. Great. So, I think you teach, you model the behavior you want to teach. So if you are empathetic, then they understand that. And with our musicians, they will be that way. Like at Juilliard, I lean towards putting women in and people who have a disadvantage. I lean towards it. Is it fair? No. And I'm straightforward about it. I lean towards it. Why do I lean towards it? Because that will make the environment be different. And some people come in, and when they leave, they're unbelievably so much better. They need an opportunity. So I lean towards them. Is it a popular thing to say? No, but that's what I do. When I'm sitting in the room, that's what I tell people. Let's lean towards this. And so far as empathy, it's like, it's little things. Like I like to touch people. I always taught elementary school kids, my whole time I've been teaching kids. It's to the point now in America where you can't touch a kid. So I was teaching in a room. I'll get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and go teach kids. If a kid is playing trumpet or something, when you touch them, that's telling them a lot. Hey, don't play this way. Do this like this. Never touch a kid. A lot of the rules you have in work are now designed to keep you away from people. You can't fight with them. I get 4 trainings a year. And those trainings teach you to essentially be a computer in a room. Don't say this, don't say that, don't talk to people, don't have your door open, don't. That's part of what lets me know I'm too old now to be in my job. And I think it's something that we have to, without the humanity, without the touch, without the feeling, without people's feelings getting hurt, it's very hard for jazz. Not so much hard for composing, because you can compose things that are for computers, and they can sound great. Computers can do fantastic things with music as tools. Like we were listening the other day to AI bebop, right? And it was interesting. So the AI was playing bebop, had no relationship to nothing, but it sounded like bebop. boom, 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 not a single note right, but boom, 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 tick, 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 tick. So we were listening to it saying, man, that's not that bad. You know, so it's the esque of the music. It's the esque of it. So if you don't know what it is, the specifics of it, but we're always striving to have people develop their taste and a nuance and an understanding of issues. So, you know, that's what I'm always with my students. I don't discourage them with their AI tools. I ask them, how can I use, they make a joke, they ask the AI questions I would ask, and you know, they send it to me and make a joke out of it. But I think the empathy and the reasoning and the judgment are things that we work on our entire lives. The discernment is the key to any allegorical frame of reference. It's why those who are afraid of allegory always want some type of literal explanation of something. Whereas in music, we have such a symbolic language, it's always allegorical. You have to unfold the meaning of it. It has many meanings. And it could be, you know what I mean? I don't know.
No, it's great.
You know what I'm saying?
I think we have time for probably one more question. Jean-Luc, I feel so bad. I know everybody has so many questions. Did you raise your hand? Oh, yeah. Okay, and then we'll have one last question in the back, and then we'll finish. Is okay?
Okay, I promise it's a quick one.
Okay.
I mean, it's a perfect segue to something that you just said about rap music. Right. I mean, you are usually seen and considered as conservative or traditionalist. I'm not even sure you like those labels.
I don't mind it.
That would be probably the first part of my question. But the second part would be, what's your opinion about those music? I'm talking about rap, I'm talking about electronic music, considering what the strong statement that you made in the past about that. I know it was more about the profanity in the rap music more than the actual art form. But I'm just curious about that. And especially for you, in relation to your brother, Brentford, who did, Buckshot Le Funk. I mean, this album was like foundational for me. I discovered this album. I was a young guy in Paris. I didn't know anything about anything. Right. So I was just wondering if you change your opinion about that.
No.
And I would even go as far as asking you if you were to pick a rap or electronic artist today to collaborate with you, who would that be?
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Okay, let me just, first of all, electronic music is a lot of music. Okay, that's a lot of music. So that depends on what you mean. Like, what are the machines doing? So I can't comment on electronic music now. So for my brother and I, most of the gigs we played in high school were funk gigs. My problem with funk and pop music was not the music, is that if you type in top 3 jazz festivals in the world, it'll be like Montreal, Montreux. Now, headliners of that festival last year, Snoop Dogg, Lettucey, what do they have to do with jazz? Where there's no discernment and no clarity, there can be no education. So our music is what it is, but Snoop Dogg is the headliner at our top festival. Damn, they got all this area, but they need ours too. Okay? Anybody who looks at it can see, anybody pick up a horn, they're playing jazz. So yes, if I'm called conservative because I believe in the standard, I don't mind it. Where there's corruption, let me be conservative. If the conservative position is not the one held by everybody, I don't see how I thought conservative meant all of y'all agree on that. Everyone agrees on a corruption that's acceptable to them. It was never acceptable to me. The use of the word nigger, calling people bitches, hoes, that's not acceptable to me. It never was, ever. It wasn't in 1983. It's more abhorrent today. You want to ask about women in jazz? What about that? It's in full view for everybody. It gets more corrupt every year. Nobody say nothing. Oh, it's so creative. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is my band. Let's put them up here. What? Are you out of your mind? Man, I grew up in the civil rights movement. I saw people struggling to get communities together. I told you what my mama was doing. My mama looked at that stuff. She was like, we went through all of that for this? And when my mama understood what that was, she had one rapper she loved. Oh, that's just the cutest little boy. You know, I love him. I said, let me read you some of his lyrics. I read the lyrics to my mother. You know what she told me after she heard them? She said, they're going to get unlimited resources now. Because she understood the slave mentality in the equation. If I'm not a part of the slave mentality, how am I go along with you calling me that, man? Because we was in the neighborhood together. Okay, we did that in the neighborhood. Guess what? We ain't in the neighborhood. You in your house, you calling your wife, and y'all have a language, whatever y'all do. I can't come in there doing that. That's y'all's business. So I'm stronger against it than I was because I see now the destruction it has caused. But you have to be at all those schools. You have to go do all of that work and see the people. It can't be an equation you get on your video game. You have to see what it did to the internal lives of those people who lived by that. It has not been worth the loss. So a few people can make money making fools of themselves. So am I about it? Yeah. Do I still dislike it? More than I did before. What I need you to do, look at it. Don't look at me. You can call me all the traditional, conservative. That doesn't, because I'm not the issue. I'm not putting that out here for your kids. So I tell everybody, look at it and don't think it's a black thing, because it's not. It's a national enterprise and it's corrupt. It was corrupt and it is corrupt. And when you look at it long after I'm gone, guess what? It's going to be corrupt, because it is. They make videos and everything. If the word's not enough for you, check out the video. I'm going to give you all a tune to check out when you leave here. It's called Pound Town. It was the favorite last year at my daughter's high school. Everybody go online and get that song, Pound Town, and just listen to it, because older people have a tendency, now they like to talk in the abstract. Don't be abstract with me. Come down home, check it out. And you ask yourself, man, is this good? Is this something I endorse? Do I think something is hip about this? You do it for yourself, and you do your own test. So yeah, I didn't want to return to what I played in high school. That doesn't mean my brother and them shouldn't do it, or any of the other musicians. I'm about jazz. It's not against them. I'm about playing. I'm not mad at nobody who don't play, but don't be mad at me for playing.
Well, thank you very much,
Ma'am,
Wynton.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Real pleasure.
Thank you, folks. We can't have a birthday celebration without a cake. And so, of course, talking about music and improvise. Lee, when you start leading that, talking about happy birthday, we were putting that trumpet on. So, but improvise and timings, everything. So, folks, I cannot let everything go without thanking the most important person in addition to our speaker, but Edith, she who put me in touch with your agents and make this all happen. So let's give her a big hand of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you go.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I think we can all raise a glass to give you a birthday toast. Thank you, Wynton.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And thank all of you for being here today. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to everyone's questions. They're very good questions, yeah.
Thank you for your good question.
So we're going to have a little cake cutting ceremony here.
Oh. There you go.
Excellent job.
Okay, brother. Thank you.
I'm going to try and set the key this time.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. He did it.
There they are.
Happy birthday, dear Wynton. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Those who want
thank
to
you.
stay for the piece